Hi friends! Over the past few years, I have encountered quite a few people, friends of friends, strangers at bars, my own neurologist, who, once they found out that I'm a reader, have asked me for book recommendations. And almost every single one of those people has followed it up by saying, oh, I haven't read a whole lot of books since school. Or I used to read a lot and then I got busy and I don't know how to get back into it. If you can hear my cat purring, she's down here and she won't shut up. So this video is for all you people who are just remembering that you have free will and that reading as an adult is fun and cool. And by the way, if I look any different in this video, it's because I got a brand new camera. Before this, I was shooting on a camera that was like 12 years old and had been through the ringer with me over the years, had been dropped more times than I can count. So hopefully I'm filming correctly on this because it's also a new camera system for me. It's a Sony and I'm not used to that. So hopefully I'm filming this with sound. Hopefully I'm filming this on the right settings. It's gonna take a while for me to get used to it. Anyway, today I'm gonna give you approximately 5 books from each main overarching genre of book. So let me emphasize this. These are not my 5 favorite books from each genre. These are generally pretty stress-free entry points to help you get back into reading. The only genre I won't be talking about today is self-help because that's entirely too dependent on what specific brand of f***ed up you are. So I have 10 genres here for you today. Technically 9, but the first one, fantasy, is going to be split up into 2 different categories. And the first one is series. I have 5 easy, accessible fantasy series to help you get back into reading. And the first is the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. These are not my favorite, but they are very accessible and they lead into some of my personal favorites. You read the first trilogy and then there's 2 duologies that come after this, which are some of the best in the game, according to my personal opinion. I'm also not going to give synopses on each of these books because I have about 50 books to talk to you about and I want this to be a pretty quick video. This is just to give you a general scope of ideas for books you might want to look out for. The second very accessible fantasy series I would recommend to you is Heartless Hunter, which is a duology. Again, these are not my favorite. I do not even like this book that much, but I think I even said in the video that I read this for, I think I talked about how accessible it is and how it feels like a great book for people who are either A, just getting into reading for the first time, or B, getting into fantasy for the first time. It's basically a witch and a witch hunter and they have forbidden love, enemies to lovers kind of stuff. Very accessible for new readers. The next series I would recommend is the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire. This is a series of novellas, which means each of these is about 160 pages. There are, I believe, 11 books out right now. She puts a new one out every January, and I want this on the list because A, I love it more than life itself, and also novellas are a lot easier and less scary to jump into than a 600-page book. Maybe I will give a tiny, it feels weird to not give at least a tiny one-liner. Shadow and Bone is about an orphan who discovers she has powers and has to use them to defeat a man. What are you about? She has to use her powers to destroy the Shadowfold and reunite her war-ravaged country. That's what that is. I already told you this is Witch and Witch Hunter, enemies to lovers, etc. Wayward Children is a series about children, but it's not YA. It's about kids who accidentally fall through portals into other worlds and then need help when they accidentally come back to our world. I would also recommend A Darker Shade of Magic, which is a trilogy by V.E. Schwab. This series is addicting and it's in a universe that's still growing. So there's the main trilogy and then there's another trilogy coming after it, and that's still being published. This is basically about 4 different Londons in 4 different realities that are stacked on top of each other. And there's this, and there's this magician named Kel, who's the only one who can travel through all these worlds, and he has to work to save the worlds from something. If you're looking to get into reading, V.E. Schwab is a great place to start in general. She has so many incredible books. If you're a new reader, or you're new here, this is Egg. This is my cat. She likes to be in every single video that I film. Next up are fantasy standalones. And I'm starting off with another one from V.E. Schwab, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This is another book that has gotten a lot of people back into reading. This is about a girl who makes a Faustian bargain with some kind of devil-like figure. And so she becomes immortal, she lives forever, but the catch is that no one ever remembers her. The second that you turn around and she's out of your eyesight, you don't know who the f this person is. And so she lives this lonely existence until one day, 300 100 years into her existence, someone finally actually recognizes her after they turn around. I would also recommend To Kill a Kingdom by Alexander Christo. I don't fully remember this book because I read it about 8 years ago, but I know that it has to do with mermaids? Princess Lyra is siren royalty? Yeah, it's a Little Mermaid reimagining. Very accessible. This might be YA. Since this is a Little Mermaid retelling, I think it's even more of an accessible point to get back into reading. Because it's familiar, it's adjacent to a story you already know. Speaking of books that are adjacent to stories you already know, by T. Kingfisher, I would recommend Thornhedge and Nettle and Bone. Thornhedge is a Sleeping Beauty retelling. Nettle and Bone isn't a retelling, but it's very fairy tale-like. So both of these will have settings that your brain is familiar with, and so it'll be easier to jump into them. So Sleeping Beauty retelling. Nettle and Bone is about a woman who has to go on a quest to save her sister from an abusive prince, and she collects this found family along the way, and it's very cute. And there's a dog in it. Kind of. I mean, there is a dog, but he's different. Next, I would recommend The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. Again, this is one that I haven't read in about 6 or 7 years, so I don't fully remember it, but I remember loving it. This is basically about a young woman, January, who finds a strange book and realizes she can escape her story and sneak into someone else's. So it's a book about books. It's a book about portal fantasy. I want to reread this soon, so if you're gonna read this one, if you're gonna choose this one out of this video, let me know, and maybe we can read it together. Last on this list, and this could be for non-readers who are looking to get into reading for the first time or again, or this could be from people coming from general fiction only, wanting to get into more fiction genre. So maybe you click this video because you are a general or historical fiction reader and you want to learn more about fantasy or horror or sci-fi. You still came to the right place, and you should read Circe by Madeline Miller. I convinced my best friend to read this book, and she had not read a single book since she and I were in Mr. Garcia's English class in 8th grade. Not a single book. So I forced her to read Circe because I had a hunch, and she loved it so much that she finished the whole book in 3 days as a non-reader. She sucked it up. She just hoovered the whole book right up. And so therefore, I learned that I was correct, and you will also love this book. And that's it for fantasy. Sci-fi is something that oh, you can see the top one. Don't look. Sci-fi is something that I feel very passionately about. It's my favorite genre of movie. I have a hunch that it's my favorite genre of book, even though I don't read enough of it. Lately, I've been reading all fantasy and horror. I need to get back to sci-fi. But the #1 book that I would recommend to absolutely anyone, even if you don't read, even if you don't like sci-fi, even if you don't like science, it's Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. If you were to check my internet history, you would see, and I double checked this, you would see that over the past few years, I have purchased this book for 12 people, because I keep forcing people to read the book because I know they'll love it, and every single time I have been correct. I don't care who you are, what your preferences are, what you think you like in media, this book is for everyone. And the movie is coming out on March 20th. So you might want to hurry up and read this before the Ryan Gosling movie comes out. I just realized I forgot to tell you what Circe is about. Circe is a Greek mythology retelling about Circe, who's a daughter of Helios and gets banished to an island and has to fight her way back into existence. Project Hail Mary is about a man who wakes up on a spaceship with no memory. He's next to 2 skeletons who used to be live humans and were supposed to still be live humans. Not anymore. He doesn't remember why he's on a spaceship. He doesn't remember who he is or what he does. He doesn't remember what his objective is. And he very quickly realizes all of that is incredibly important. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Very accessible. Everyone f***ing loves it. Even if they don't read, even if they hate science, even if they don't read sci-fi, blah, 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 read the book. Next up, I think that you should read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. It's pretty accessible. This is about a man who gets knocked out in the street and wakes up in a life that looks kind of like his if he had made a different decision like 15 years prior, and somehow he has accidentally fallen into this other universe, this other reality, and he has to fight his way back. This is a good sci-fi book if you don't want to read basically any science at all. I might be wrong on this, but from what I can remember, there's very little actual science in this. This is more sci-fi thriller than just sci-fi. There's no hard, heavy science. I think it's a very easy one to get into. And now I have a few more specific recommendations for sci-fi. If you are coming to me from the movies, if you're a person who loves movies and now wants to get into the book media side of things, read the fucking Hunger Games. I hadn't read this until earlier this year. No, it's 2026. I hadn't read this until last year, even though I had seen the movie 40,000 times. The books are absolutely incredible. And the new one, Sunrise on the Reaping, the movie for that comes out in November. These are easy. These are YA books, very accessible for kids and adults alike. You can read them with your kids. You can read them with you can read them alone. The point is they are easy to get through. If you don't know what the Hunger Games is about, I don't know how to help you. It's a dystopian future. There's a capital city and they're on top and they're the 1%, except in this situation it's like the 0.0001%, and then everything turns into war. Read the Hunger Games. So that was movies. If you are coming to me from video games, if you're a video game guy or girl or non-binary pal, and you've decided that you want to go into books, which is a fantastic decision, may I interest you in Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman. This is about a man who wanders outside at 4 a.m. to retrieve his ex-girlfriend's cat who escaped, and suddenly everything around him flattens. There's no more buildings, no more cars, no more trees. Everything just gets flattened into the earth, and any human who is inside at that time is dead. Crushed into oblivion. Gone. And it turns out that aliens have come and they basically turn Earth into a big video game. And he has to go through the levels of a video game in order to survive at all. I've only read the first one. I think there are 7 out right now with an 8th coming out in May. But if you are coming from video games, I promise you, you will love these books. And for reference, I have never played aside from like Sims and Zoo Tycoon, I've never played a video game in my fucking life. So there was a little bit of a learning curve with some of the words and phrases and everything, but I still had a great fucking time. If you are coming from general fiction, you're only a general or historical fiction reader, and you want to transition into genre fiction, may I interest you in Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a very mild, low-stakes apocalypse book. It follows a group of people who travel around in a big caravan, and they're performers, they're artists, they're theater people, and they put on plays for the people who are still alive in this apocalypse. And it has a past timeline, a present timeline. It's beautiful. It's sci-fi technically, but it's also very literary. Or if you're used to the lighter side of fiction and you want to try sci-fi but you want it to be more cozy, may I interest you in The Monk and Robot Duology by Becky Chambers. This is a psalm for the wild-built and a prayer for the crown-shy. And this is a future in which all technology doesn't really exist anymore because there were robots, but they gained sentience and they were like, hey, we don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to be like slaves to the human race. And so they just got up and they wandered into the forest and no one ever saw the robots again. So that's happening. And then there's also a T-monk. What is your name? Dex. There's a T-monk named Dex, and they are having an existential crisis. And so they also basically wander into the forest to figure out who they are and what they want. And they encounter a robot, and they're the first human to encounter a robot in like over 100 years or something. And it's a really cozy little story about their travels together. And I am not a cozy girl. I don't like cozy books, but I ate these up, and I wish that there were more. Horror was a fun one to try and figure out because I don't really understand in my brain what kind of horror someone would want if they're new to reading. I've been watching horror movies since I was like 2 years old, and I have to imagine that anyone going into horror books is already watching horror films. So hopefully I got these ones right. First one up is Fantastic Land by Mike Bakoven. This was one of my favorite books that I read 2 years ago? I think 2 years ago. I had so much fucking fun with this book. This is about a theme park in Florida that experiences this massive hurricane and they have to shut down, and like 300 employees sign up to be locked in the theme park during the hurricane to make sure that things stay okay, that everyone stays safe, that things don't get up, all of that. But they wind up getting trapped at this theme park for like 6 weeks, and it really quickly devolves into a Lord of the Flies situation. They are murdering people left and right. They're creating cults. They're taking over rides and systematically torturing people inside of them. It's crazy, and it is so much fun. It's also told in interview format, so that might be interesting for a first-time reader to read, but I didn't think about that until just now. Give it a try. Fantastic Land. Next for horror, We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kluwer. This was my favorite book that I read in 2025. Number 1. This also happened to be the very first haunted house book I've ever read. This is about 2 women who buy a house, and the house turns out to be not exactly what it appeared to be. Weird things start going on in the house. A family shows up and they go, hey, can we tour your house? I want to show my kids because I used to live here. I lived here when I was a child. Can I show my kids around the house? And weirdly enough, enough, please never do this, they say, yeah, strangers, please come inside the house. And it goes forward from there. I don't want to tell you anything else at all about this book. I just want you to read it. This is mixed media. There's some Morse code in here that you have to solve in different chapters. It will make you want to read more horror because you're having so much fun. You cannot help but be locked into this book. And we are back to books that lean on a familiar fairy tale and therefore are more accessible, and that's The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. This is another Little Mermaid retelling, except it's what would happen if the Little Mermaid gave birth to about 1,000 evil tiny mermaid babies who wound up eating everyone in the kingdom. And the cover is so beautiful. Look at that shit. If you are new to reading horror, if you're coming from fantasy, if you're coming from somewhere else, you're just new to horror, The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher is a really good place to start because it's more a mix of fantasy horror and it's pretty light, to me at least. This is about a woman who starts working at her uncle's oddities museum and she finds a portal in the back room and it takes her to a very, very strange land. Last for horror, also if you're coming from general fiction, I would suggest Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. This is a literary horror in the highest sense. This is about a woman who loses her child loses him to death. He passes away. She is in such a state of grief that she listens to an old wives' tale from her culture and she cuts a part of his lung out and she starts feeding this part of his lung and eventually it grows into something. Very literary, very beautiful, highly suggested. Now we're on to 5 recommendations for general fiction that I think are pretty easy entryways into reading for you. First up is my favorite literary fiction book I have ever read, I think, and that's Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. This is about a teenage girl growing up in the 90s and coming to terms with the fact that she's gay as hell and she's in love with one of her best friends. This has some of the most beautiful, poetic, yearning writing I've ever read in my life. And it's gorgeous. Like gorgeous, gorgeous. I recommend that everyone in the entire world reads Sunburn, so hopefully you will. Next up, speaking of gay yearning, Open Heaven by Sean Hewitt. This is basically the same book in a different font. 2 gay girls, 2 gay boys. Which way do you want to go? Or both. You can go both ways. Next, as a great entry point into reading general fiction, is one that you probably have heard of after this past couple of months, and that is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. You maybe even have watched the movie. And even if you have seen the movie, I highly recommend you read the book. They're obviously similar, this is the source material, but they have differences to them, and reading the words, it just hits you differently. If you live under a rock and you have no idea what this is, which is fine, I respect you and your rock that you live under. This is about the family of William Shakespeare. Mainly his wife, who had kind of a little magical realism childhood, a little bit, and they have a son named Hamnet who winds up dying of bubonic plague. That's not a spoiler, that's literally what the book is about. And it's about his wife's life and everything that she goes through, and her grief and her love and her longing for her family. Beautiful, sad, prepare yourself for tears. Next up is a really short one. That's Foster by Claire Keegan. This is about a child who is one of many in an Irish family. She's taken to live for the summer with relatives, and in that house she starts to find affection and warmth that she doesn't know in her own house, and she starts to not want to go home. This is an easy entryway into reading simply because it is so short. This also has won pretty much every award under the sun. So if you don't want to become a reader, you just want to read one book that will impress people, Foster by Claire Keegan. If perhaps you are not super new to reading, but you want an easy intro to weird fiction or magical realism, may I suggest The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. I love weird fiction. The weirder the premise, the better for me. This is about a woman who discovers that her attic has somehow become magical. She wakes up one day and suddenly has a husband who she didn't have the day before, but then her whole life has molded around the fact that she has this husband. There are photos of them, her friends all know him, etc. She sends him up in the attic and a different man comes down, and she does it again, different man. So she gets to test drive all these husbands, and that's pretty much it. It's very fun. It's lighthearted. It's not very serious at all. It's an easy one to start your magical realism journey with. Alright guys, don't worry, we are halfway through. Next up, is nonfiction. Most of the nonfiction that I read is wildlife, nature, conservation, adventure based, and so that is what I am going to recommend to you today. These are the 5 people that I care about the most aside from people that I know personally. First up, quite obviously, is Jane Goodall. I don't know what I have to say here to convince you to read books about wildlife, about conservation, about environmentalism and saving our planet and saving the species on our planet. I don't know what I have to say to convince you. But if you are already convinced, there is no better place to start than Jane Goodall. Any of Jane Goodall's books. I just brought In the Shadow of Man here with me because it was the first one that I saw on my shelf. Jane Goodall is probably the most famous conservationist that has ever existed. If you're gonna know one of them, you're gonna know Jane Goodall. Next, if you have been here on my channel for any longer than 9 seconds, you will know next up is David Attenborough. 2 of the books by him that you could choose are A Life on Our Planet and Ocean. David Attenborough is a conservationist who is turning 100 years old this year, and he has worked as a conservationist for over 80 of those years. He has never stopped, he has never wavered, he has never taken a fucking break. This man deserves everything. So these are just 2 of his books. You can choose any of them and I would be thrilled. Next up is the man himself, Steve Irwin, and the book is My Steve by his wife Terry. There's Terry. If you don't know who Steve Irwin is, you may live under that rock that I was talking about before. I don't understand you, but I respect you. I'm here to tell you, Steve Irwin was an incredible man who did everything for his entire life to save the wildlife of Australia and around the world, and to make a safer, better world for the animals. 4 out of 5 is any book by Anthony Bourdain. That's not the one I tried to grab. Hold on. There we go. Kitchen Confidential is usually where people start with Anthony Bourdain. This is the book that got him famous in the literary world. This is the book that put him on the map with a whole lot of things. Anthony Bourdain. There you go. Anthony Bourdain was a famous chef. Come on, you gonna be good? Anthony Bourdain was a famous chef and world traveler who had a very specific outlook on world travel. There she is. I do everything in my power every single day to live like this man in the majority of ways, not every way. Last on this list would be Joy Adamson and her book Born Free. If you don't know the name Joy Adamson, she is essentially the Jane Goodall of lions. Lions are my favorite creature on the entire planet, aside from dogs and this cat. And since I was about 2 years old, I wanted to grow up to be Joy Adamson. And this is the story about her finding an orphaned lion cub who she helps to rehabilitate. And that marks the end of my nonfiction recommendations. Next up is classics, and I think this is going to be pretty easy to run through. I would assume that you've heard of most of these. First up is my #1 favorite book of all time, and has been since I was about 8 years old when I had to read it in school, and that is The Giver by Lois Lowry. This is about a utopian, dystopian future society in which they have decided that the best way to proceed with life is to take away the possibility of emotions in general, which obviously doesn't work out very well for anyone. Next up is 2 books. I cannot find my copy of one of them, so if you have heard of Jack London, this is Call of the Wild. There's also White Fang. They're both centered around dogs. They're like Balto in that way. This is about Buck, who becomes a sled dog and has to learn methods of survival that he didn't have to before. I have a tattoo for this book, if that gives you any indication of how much I love it. And White Fang, I forget what White Fang is about, but it's similar. It's following the life of a dog. Next up is Animal Farm by George Orwell. I will also accept 1984 here, but Animal Farm is short. It's a pretty easy entrance into classics. You could read this book in 1 day easily. This is about animals who start a rebellion and take over a farm. They speak, they create their own government, everything goes to shit, etc. I would highly recommend The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I read this a long time ago and then again last year, where I remembered that this is one of my favorite stories of all time. And I mean stories because the actual story is only like 30 pages. And it's about a woman who's going through postpartum depression and then postpartum psychosis, and her husband does everything f***ing wrong and basically drives her insane. Penultimately, and this is a good one for if you want to get into Shakespeare but you don't know where to start, my favorite Shakespeare play is A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's very heavily fantasy leaning. There's fairies, there's gods. It's a fun one. I also haven't read this in quite a while, so I think it's time for me to do a reread also. Also time for me to do a reread for is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. This one, I think we all had to read in like 4th grade, right? This is basically the TV show Lost, but with children. A bunch of boys get stuck on a deserted island and they have to create their own civilization and their own rules, and it goes nuts. This next category I was not initially going to include. Poetry deserves and will get its own video because it operates on such a different level and there are too many layers to it to get into really in this surface level of a video. But I have 5 poets to start you off with if you want just a quick little rundown list. The first one is Rumi. R-U-M-I, Rumi. He's a romantic poet. He was a Sufi mystic. He was alive in the 1200s, right? Fact check? Anyway, Rumi. Next is Rainer Maria Rilke, and I would also call him a romantic. He's very intense. I think he was German. That seems German to me. And he died like 100 years ago-ish? Hold on. Oh, he died almost exactly 100 years ago, December 1926. I'm not going into depth about these poets because I don't know how I would. Next up, again a romantic, is Pablo Neruda. He was a Chilean poet who died 50-ish years ago. Highly romantic. There are entire books filled just with his love poems. And I am a romantic at heart. Next is my fucking girl, Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver unfortunately died a few years ago. She has such a way of connecting to nature through her poems. And she is a good read for when you're sad, when you're happy, when you're angry, all of it. It makes you feel small in a really good way. Lastly is Louise Gluck, another female poet who connects heavy to nature topics. That's all 5 of the poets that I have for you today. That is not an extensive list. Please don't take it as such. These last 2 genres, I don't read these. So I'm going to tell you the only books from these genres that I've ever read and actually liked. Starting with 3 romance books that I read like 12 years ago, so I can't vouch for them anymore, but I read them as a non-romance reader, so I feel like that means that they are probably easy entry points into the genre. So just roll with me here. First up is Jane by Robin Maxwell. This is a Tarzan retelling, and I don't remember much more. I think it's pretty much the same. Jane goes to the jungles of Africa, she finds Tarzan, they fall in love. Next is My Name is Memory by Anne Brashares, who happens to be the same woman who wrote Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. And this again, I don't remember much because I read it 12 plus years ago, but I know it has to do with time travel or portals. Oh no, it's like reincarnation. It's like soulmates reincarnating but finding each other in different lifetimes. And sometimes they remember each other and sometimes they don't. Blah, blah, blah. I loved it 12 years ago. I should reread it. Hopefully it is still good. Last up is The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. This is about a woman who's had an entire life with her husband, with her children, and then she finds herself in an affair with the man that she was in love with when she was younger and is now her best friend, something like that. I've seen a lot of people who don't like this book because they don't like books with cheating in it. I don't like tropifying cheating. Not everything has to be a trope. Cheating is an unfortunate part of life, but a part of life it is. And so I don't see why we shouldn't be reading books with it in it. So like, I don't know, grow up. I promise you that you reading a book about cheating doesn't mean you condone cheating and doesn't mean that you're going to go out and cheat. As for mystery thriller, it turns out I have only read 2 mystery thrillers ever in my entire life. And one was written by YouTubers, which was going to mean that I was going to discount it off this list, but actually that might make it more accessible to people who are just getting into reading. So I guess I'm including The Lost Causes of Bleak Creek by Rhett McLaughlin and Link Neal. Although this endorsement does not necessarily mean that this book is good, because again, I read this probably 10 years ago and I remember absolutely none of it. The only other mystery thriller I've ever read is one I would most likely recommend to people who are new to the genre of mystery thriller but don't want something very thrilling yet. And somehow I mean that in a good way because I loved this book, and that was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is very much a slow literary mystery book. And it's about a girl who goes missing at a summer camp, but then it turns out her brother also went missing from that same summer camp like 15 years prior. He was never found, and so now we're racing around trying to find her. Actually, we're not racing around. It's slow and thick. This thing is 500 pages, and it's a slow read, but it's beautiful. Very literary, very good writing. Recommend wholeheartedly. And so that was it. That was approximately 50-ish recommendations for you if you are trying to get into reading for the first time, or if you're trying to branch out of the genres that you feel stuck in. Hopefully you found something interesting to take away from this video. If you didn't, let me know. If you just found this whole video boring and uninformative, let me know. If you found a book that you decided you want to read, let me know. If you have more suggestions for any of these genres, books that you think would be easy jumping off points for any of the genres, let me know. If you just want to say hi, let me know. If you want to tell me something specific, let me know. You know, anything you want to say to me, let me know. Otherwise, we're done. Thank you so much for being here. If you can hear me, if you can read the subtitles, I appreciate you. I'm happy you're here. I hope you're having a wonderful end of winter. I hope we're excited for the beginning of spring. That's it. I love you. Bye. Where does it say how long I've been filming for? Egg! Stop! What are you doing? Egg, egg, eggo, stop! Egg, 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 eggo? Egg? I'm gonna put you back upstairs. Yes. This is a very mild, low stakes apocalypse book. Egg is going crazy.